There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't come from solitude, but from orbiting other people's lives without ever really landing. You move through rooms, meetings, dinners, even laughter, and somehow remain untouched. It's not hostility that keeps you apart. It's something quieter, a practiced distance. For many men, that distance becomes identity, independence mistaken for integrity. You tell yourself, "I'm fine alone." And for a while, that's true. You work, you train, you stay disciplined. But late at night, when the noise dies down, there's an ache. Not dramatic, just steady. A small gravity pulling toward connection, and an old fear pushing back. Imagine a satellite, perfect in its orbit, precise, controlled. It circles the planet endlessly, transmitting signals, but never lands. The satellite man lives that way, always near warmth, never in it. He's learned that distance is safer than dependency. What once protected him has hardened into habit. Somewhere behind that pattern sits a wound, often early, often unspoken. A father who mocked softness, a mother too overwhelmed to soothe, a friend who betrayed trust. The body remembers even when the mind insists it's over. The amygdala, our alarm bell, stays half-lit, scanning for threats that no longer exist. Cortisol laces the bloodstream, whispering, "Don't relax. It's not safe yet." Over time, vigilance becomes personality. This is where loneliness becomes armor, not accident. You convince yourself that calm equals control, but beneath the stillness is overregulation, your nervous system trapped in low-grade alert. What feels like peace is actually suppression. The cost is connection. Modern culture doesn't help. Especially for men, independence is branded as virtue. You're told to stand alone, not need anyone, hold the line. But biology disagrees. The male nervous system, like any humans, was built for co-regulation. Our stress literally drops when we feel seen. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, doesn't care about your stoic ideals. It cares about touch, trust, and tone of voice. Still, there's a dignity in that restraint. The lone wolf is not broken. He's adaptive. He learned that closeness could mean control, that vulnerability could be used as a weapon. So he traded connection for safety. But safety without softness slowly turns to stone. This film isn't about blaming that defense. It's about understanding it. Because these patterns aren't fate. They're scripts written in pain, repeated until they're seen. We'll trace 5 of them, each one a different mask men wear to protect the same wound, the fear of being known and rejected for who they really are. Across these chapters, we'll move through the stoic, the intellectual, the performer, the crusader, and the hermit. You may find pieces of yourself in each. None are wrong. All are incomplete. Midway, we'll uncover the one pattern most men mistake for strength, the habit that guarantees disconnection. And by the end, we'll return to something quieter, the possibility that sovereignty and intimacy were never enemies. For now, take a breath. Feel the chair beneath you. The breath is proof you're still connected, to air, to gravity, to something larger than your thoughts. You don't have to solve anything yet. Just listen. Somewhere inside the silence of the lone wolf, a signal is already waiting to be heard. There's a kind of control that looks like strength from the outside but feels like numbness on the inside. You keep your tone even, your posture steady, your schedule full. People trust you to hold it together. Yet in private, emotion barely moves through. Joy feels muted, sadness inconvenient, tenderness almost foreign. For many men, this isn't arrogance, it's fear, disguised as discipline. Somewhere deep in the nervous system lies an old belief. If I let myself feel too much, I'll lose control. That's not delusion, it's conditioning. It often begins in childhood when sensitivity was met with ridicule, or when closeness meant being swallowed by someone else's chaos. Control became survival. Jung might call this the overdeveloped animus, the inner masculine principle of reason and order, swelling to protect what once felt unprotected. Rationality becomes armor against the body's storms. The result isn't peace, it's paralysis. From a biological view, constant repression dampens the oxytocin system. That's the hormone of bonding and trust. When its flow is chronically suppressed, the body flattens emotional peaks and valleys. Calm turns into emptiness. The nervous system mistakes stillness for safety, but it's really just shut down. In Western culture, this shutdown is praised. The strong man archetype, self-reliant, composed, never sentimental, is the quiet heir of generations of fathers who confused silence with dignity. They were never told, "I'm proud of you," so they learned to stop needing it. The cycle repeats, men teaching boys that composure equals maturity, when in truth it often hides exhaustion. It's not weakness to crave warmth after years of control. The Stoic mask once kept dignity intact, but the same walls that protected the heart now make it unreachable. Emotional containment becomes emotional exile. Partners sense the distance but can't name it. Friends admire your steadiness but rarely see your soul. And beneath it all, the nervous system stays tense, like a clenched fist that forgot why it started closing. That's the paradox. The tighter you grip control, the less control you actually have. What you suppress rules you from underneath. So this first pattern isn't about becoming less strong. It's about rediscovering what real strength feels like. Flexible, alive, connected. Strength that can tremble and still remain. A quiet experiment for reflection. Notice moments when you call yourself calm. Then check, does your body feel open or braced? Sometimes what we call calm is just the absence of permission. As this pattern unfolds, a new trap often forms. If emotion feels too unpredictable, the mind doubles down on analysis. The heart is silenced, and intellect becomes the new wall. Control migrates from body to thought. It feels safer, but isolates even further. And so, our next chapter meets that second defense. The fortress built from reason. When logic becomes the weapon that keeps love at bay. Some men build walls not with bricks, but with ideas. Thought becomes the fortress. Reason becomes the tool to keep others at a distance, and often it begins early. As a boy, your cleverness was rewarded, but only when it made sense, only when it solved a problem, only when it impressed someone else. Feeling, unpredictability, vulnerability, these were risky, unreliable currencies. Logic became the only way to be noticed, the only way to belong. Over time, the left prefrontal cortex, the seat of analysis and planning, can become overactive. Thinking is constant. Emotions are dissected before they reach the surface. The body learns to bypass its own signals. A surge of anger or tenderness or desire, before it is felt, it is rationalized, explained, and shelved. Detachment becomes a habit. From the outside, this is admirable. You're respected, often feared, admired for insight and clarity. But intimacy requires something more. Connection needs exposure, not explanation. People sense that the fortress has no door. They wonder if they will ever be enough to reach you. And so, proximity triggers discomfort, not comfort. The clever man becomes isolated, even when surrounded by peers. Cultural parallels are vivid. Think of Machiavelli's prince, clever, strategic, commanding respect, yet fundamentally alone. The mind is admired, the heart is not fully seen. Safety is maintained, but intimacy is foreclosed. The paradox deepens because the fortress protects the very wound it can't heal. Validation was conditional in childhood. Approval depended on solving or reasoning. Now your mind solves, analyzes, and navigates. But love, raw, unfiltered, imperfect, remains elusive. Logic offers certainty, but certainty is not warmth. Some men respond by seeking performance in other arenas. Charisma, achievement, humor, mastery, all become camouflage for the heart that fears exposure. The intellect continues to protect, but in a new form, the body still waits for what it cannot name. A quiet reflection emerges. Notice the moments when analysis overrides feeling. When the brain jumps in before the body speaks, ask, what am I afraid the other will see? Recognition of this pattern does not diminish intellect. It invites presence. The fortress can remain, but doors can appear. As the mind shields, the need to be seen elsewhere grows, and that is where the next pattern begins. The performer persona. The man who seeks connection through applause, attention, and admiration. There is a man who feels invisible until a room turns toward him. He thrives on applause, on laughter, on being noticed. Charisma becomes the lens through which he measures worth, a subtle addiction that begins with a simple hunger, to be seen, to matter, to exist in another's gaze. This pattern often originates from a mother wound left unacknowledged. Perhaps care was inconsistent, perhaps attention came only when the child pleased or performed. The nervous system learns that visibility equals survival and that approval must be earned. Dopamine rewards small victories. Attention becomes a drug. Admiration, the only proof of self. Yet the paradox is cruel. The connection built on applause is fragile, collapsing in silence. Off stage, off camera, or after the laughter fades, relationships often wither. The body knows the emptiness, even when the mind interprets success as validation. Recognition is temporary. The underlying ache remains. A vivid example exists in a musician who poured his soul into every performance. On stage, he was alive, radiant, inseparable from the audience's energy. Off stage, friendships dissolved within months. He discovered that the glow of the crowd masked a deeper withdrawal, that the heart remained untouched. This persona feeds on admiration to avoid invisibility, yet in doing so, it erects new walls. The need to be seen becomes a lens through which all relationships are measured. Intimacy is assessed by applause, not by presence. Trust becomes transactional. The worthiness of the self depends on external acknowledgement. The thread continues. When the lights dim and applause retreats, the performer often folds inward, retreating behind another defense: moral superiority. The need for external validation transforms into certainty and judgment, another method of self-protection. A quiet reflection. Notice the moments when attention feels like currency. Where does your heart seek proof outside itself? Recognition of this pattern does not diminish charm or skill. It illuminates the terrain where the soul waits to be felt, not applauded. And now, the next pattern takes this need for certainty and armor into a new form: the moral crusader. A man who replaces intimacy with righteousness, trust with rules, and vulnerability with virtue. Some men retreat into certainty, finding refuge in rules, virtue, and moral clarity. The world, chaotic and unpredictable, feels safer when organized by absolutes. Righteousness becomes the language of control, the armor that shields a heart wary of betrayal and disappointment. Often, this pattern emerges from wounds of trust. Early betrayals or violations, small or large, teach the nervous system that others are unreliable, that dependence is dangerous. The wounded child within whispers, "I cannot risk being hurt again." The conscious mind answers through the hero archetype. Firm, unwavering, upright. Rules replace relationships. Morality becomes the measure of value. Jung would see the moral crusader as identifying with the hero to cover the wounded child. The clarity and confidence projected are real, yet they conceal unresolved vulnerability. Certainty calms the limbic system. Judgment substitutes for empathy. In this way, anxiety is contained, but intimacy is deferred. The cultural mirror is striking. Nietzsche called it slave morality, a virtue born from resentment. When fairness, ethics, or principles are wielded as shields, connection often recedes. Others feel the intensity, sense the line, and step back. Safety is preserved at the cost of closeness. The exhaustion is subtle, but cumulative. To constantly measure the world, to constantly correct, demands energy. Over time, the moral crusader may sense the strain. Behind the righteousness lies fatigue, a quiet longing for ease and acceptance. Yet retreating is dangerous. The fortress has already taught that letting down the guard risks pain. Here, moral control often transitions into withdrawal. When the weight of judgment becomes too heavy, solitude offers relief. Intimacy is deferred. Dependency is avoided. Self-sufficiency is glorified. The mind and heart conspire to preserve safety, even if it isolates. A reflective moment. Notice where certainty feels like refuge. When rules become shields, what might be waiting underneath for recognition, acceptance, or warmth? Observing this is not weakness. It is the first step in bringing awareness to the patterns that silently shape your relationships. And now we move to the final pattern, where self-sufficiency becomes both armor and prison, the hermit's pride. Some men embrace solitude as a sanctuary. It begins as protection, a retreat from disappointment, betrayal, or the weight of expectation. Over time, it becomes identity. Autonomy is inflated into virtue. Dependency is treated as danger. The hermit's pride is not born from arrogance alone. It grows from the careful cultivation of distance, honed over years of learned vigilance. Beneath this pride lies a subtle nervous system pattern. Oxytocin levels remain low, while dopamine rewards the isolation itself. Solitude offers a predictable self-loop of control, comfort, and self-reward. The world beyond the walls is unpredictable, messy, sometimes painful. Staying apart feels safer, even when it quietly drains vitality. This pattern resonates across cultures. Imagine the samurai without a clan, disciplined to the extreme, loyal to the code but disconnected from the warmth of a community. Discipline becomes coffin, not temple. Mastery becomes numbness. Years of careful self-reliance can erode spontaneity, tenderness, and the deep reassurance that comes from being truly seen. Even when the hermit is aware of the cost, missed friendships, fading intimacy, unshared experiences, the nervous system often prefers the quiet loop of solitude. There is safety in predictability. There is pain in opening to uncertainty. This tension, subtle but constant, underlies much of modern male isolation. A cross-cultural story illustrates the pattern. A Japanese salaryman who, after burnout, withdrew entirely from friendships and social obligations. For years he described his life as peaceful, controlled, free. Yet the peace slowly revealed itself as numbness. Only later did he recognize that self-sufficiency, once protective, had become a barrier between him and the fullness of living. Reflection enters quietly here. What began as protection now carries a cost. The hermit's pride shows us that autonomy and connection are not opposites. Strength does not require isolation, and intimacy does not dilute mastery. Recognition, awareness, and small steps toward measured connection are not concessions. They are recalibrations of nervous system safety. The story completes the arc we began with the satellite man. From the stoic to the hermit, each pattern was an attempt to survive, to be whole in a world that sometimes seemed unsafe. The cost has always been connection. The opportunity now is awareness. After moving through these patterns, a quiet truth emerges. Loneliness is not punishment. It is the psyche's mirror. It reflects fear, mistrust, and unintegrated parts of the self. It shows where dependence has been avoided, where vulnerability has been deferred, where connection has been traded for control. This reflection is not failure. It is information, a map of what has been protected and what has been postponed. Return to the image of the desert wanderer. He has traversed distance, faced heat, thirst, and uncertainty. Finally, at the edge of the desert, an oasis appears. In its still water, he sees his reflection, not as someone broken, but as someone who has carried both strength and fear. Relationships are like that oasis, mirrors of integration, not threats to sovereignty. Intimacy does not dilute power. It grounds it, steadies it, makes presence tangible. Connection requires discernment, patience, and courage. It asks only that the body and mind recognize what they have been guarding. It invites the stoic, the intellectual, the performer, the crusader, and the hermit to sit together in quiet reflection, not judgment. The patterns remain, but awareness transforms their weight. A subtle invitation lingers in this space. Notice one reflection, one pattern that resonates. Share it lightly, even in a single sentence, and another man may recognize himself in your signal. This is the start of integration, not performance, not repair, not perfection, but recognition and choice. Peace is not boring. It is the nervous system remembering safety. Strength is not isolation. It is the capacity to be fully present without collapsing. Sovereignty is not avoidance. It is measured engagement, grounded in clarity and compassion. As the desert shifts from night to dawn, the water holds stillness. And in that stillness, the lone wolf might see something he has long denied. He is not separate from the world he fears, and the cost of disconnection can now be understood, and with time, softened.